I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. You know, I actually felt like a pretty good parent with our firstborn. He slept through the night from the very beginning. In fact, he slept so hard as a toddler, we'd have to wake him up from his nap so he didn't ruin his overnight sleep. He potty trained himself practically, never an accident. And then we realized kids are just not all the same because our next child had a little more personality. Few more opinions. She's 6 now. She yells at us less. But, at the core of today's episode, what we're talking about is raising our kids, treating them well, getting them help when they need it, and the state-funded services that are available to any family here in the state. We're going to start with toddlers and preschoolers and the Regional Intervention Program, better known as RIP, though they like to just call it Parenting That Works, RIP, doesn't sell all that well. Jamie Herndon started in this program more than 10 years ago.
I had a 2-year-old, first only child, and we're transplants, and we had no family here, and, just kind of were winging it on our own, first baby, and he was enrolled in a parent stay out program. He was having trouble, like 2-year-olds do, snatching toys and sitting at the carpet. And he was just having more trouble than the rest of the children. Like, he couldn't stay for any amount of time. And he was having a lot of difficulty following instructions. Yeah. And we were seeing that at home. We just didn't have anything to compare it to.
So what, was it a pediatrician or the preschool itself that sort of recommended trying this?
Yeah, so it was the preschool director called us in for the dreaded parent conference, parent-teacher conference. And towards the end, we wanted to be defensive at first, but the things that she was saying, we knew they were true. And so we were like, we don't know what to do. We're doing our very best. And so she slid, a brochure across the table, and it was for the RIP program. And we were slightly offended at first, and we were like, what do you mean we need this parenting program? But then she brought in a preschool teacher who had been through the program probably 15, 16 years before, and she could tell us, about her experience. And she did. She told us about her son now, what that experience was like for their family, and then how it laid a foundation and how he is now. Mm. And so, successful college student at the time, and so, that kind of brought me around to, okay, well, I'll just call and I'll just go and see for myself. And what we found was a community that we wanted to be part of.
It's Jamie Herndon, who is now program manager at the RIP Center in Nashville, which is based, kind of nestled in the Creve Hall neighborhood, just at the edge of the state's Ellington Agricultural Campus. Here in the studio, we've got Melissa Binkley, who's Director of Infant and Early Childhood Initiatives for the state of Tennessee, the Department of Mental Health. Welcome to This is Nashville.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for having me out at the RIP Center the other day. So when people hear mental health, they don't usually think toddlers. Like, what does mental health really look like for kids 6 and under?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think when we think about mental health services, we picture the couch and the therapist with the pen and paper. And when we're talking about young children, we're really talking about laying a foundation for lifelong social skills, right? So that includes being able to form meaningful relationships, so the back and forth interaction between the child and their caregivers. We're talking about being able to identify and describe their emotions, recognize emotions in others, and being able to form friendships with peers and engage in difficult situations with perseverance and appropriate behavior in those spaces.
So does a child who ends up at one of your old centers across the state, does it mean that they have a diagnosis of some kind?
No, often not. So we will typically see families come in that are just maybe starting their journey towards a diagnosis. Some of them do. Things like ADHD, autism, these are pretty common early childhood diagnoses, but some of them don't have them and never will get them. What's happening is that they're seeing that child have a hard time engaging appropriately in multiple environments.
Well, even the brief time I spent at the center, it became really clear that a lot of the work is really just about supporting parents as much as anything else. How do you help them feel like they're part of the solution without making them feel like they are partly to blame?
That's a great question, too. So there's a famous psychologist, D.W. Winnicott, who says there's no such thing as a baby. There's only a baby and. Children really don't exist outside of the context of their relationships. They require adult support to be able to live and navigate their world. And so what we talk about with families is you are this child's most important and primary teacher, support. You're the one they're looking for to learn how to navigate the world around them. And so we coach parents up to feel like they have the skills and empowerment to be able to make those changes for their family.
Just some of the brass tacks here. There's the center in Creve Hall. There are sites around the state. How does it work? How does a family end up getting help through these centers, which come at no cost?
Yeah. Program's completely free. It's entirely self-referred. So families will often, hear about us, like Jamie described, through their childcare center, through their pediatrician, maybe through a friend.
Really?
And then they give us a call.
You don't need some referral.
No, absolutely not. No, we're not looking for any kind of professional referral to the program. Just give us a call. Yeah. When you call us, you are greeted by a warm, friendly voice on the other side of the line that says, "Tell me about your kiddo." And then come for a tour. And so you get to see the program in action. When you come to RIP, you get toured in the building by a family who's currently enrolled in program and can tell you what it's been like for their family too.
Yeah, and the sites are one in each county here in Middle Tennessee, generally?
We're pretty spread out. So we've got this central site here in Nashville. In Middle Tennessee, we also have sites in Columbia, Clarksville, and Smyrna. Yeah. And then we have 4 sites in East and 1 in Memphis as well.
Got it. I'm Blake Farmer. This is Nashville. Our guest you're hearing here is Melissa Binkley, who leads early childhood initiatives for the Tennessee Department of Mental Health. So I dropped by this center, and you took me inside this dark room, and we watched a couple of kids playing with 2 adults. We were looking through this one-way glass. Let's listen into that.
Why are you trying to stop?
Okay, that's the teacher's chair, right?
Yeah.
So teacher's chair belongs to teacher.
So like there's some the adults talking to these kids. Like what's even going on there? These because I'm still not sure. Were those teachers? Were those parents? What was going on?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. So parents get trained when they come to Parenting That Works to be able to work in their classroom with their own and other people's children. It is so much easier to do this with somebody else's kid than it is to do with your own.
But so you kind of get separated from your kid. And it's like you're going to work with someone else's child because that's going to remove some of the emotion maybe from this process?
Yeah, and we have staff members that are there to support as parents are learning these skills. We certainly are never hanging anybody out to dry, right? There's lots of support in the space. About half of our staff are graduated parents themselves. So you heard Jamie, she came through program. Many, many other of our staff members have come through program themselves, and they're able to say, I'm not going to ask you to do anything that I haven't done myself, and I did this and you can too, and it's so meaningful in those spaces.
Well, you're talking about that sort of, you end up receiving services, and then you're part of giving the services when you're in the program. We ran into Raven D. She just gave her last initial, said actually everyone in the program goes by their last initial to kind of provide a little anonymity. But she was getting ready to start giving these day one tours to parents who were coming through and making a visit. And she'd already done phase 1 herself where you're receiving services.
I'm in the second phase, so I am on the giving back. And when you're paired with parents who are in phase 1, it's kind of like I'm glad I was given all the strategies because this parent needs help now, and I can help them a little more with what they're being challenged with.
So why do the parents become the teachers here? Is that, to cut costs or something? What's the idea?
It's by design. So the fastest way to learn anything is to teach it to somebody else. And we enroll families on a rolling basis. So there's always more experienced families like Raven and new families coming into the program that are just beginning their journey. The community aspect of RIP is such an important and integral part of the program. Behavior can be really isolating. When families are experiencing challenging behaviors, it's hard to go out to dinner. It's hard to go to the grocery store. It's hard to sometimes be with your family at grandma's house with breakables everywhere. And so when you come to RIP, you meet other parents who are experiencing some of the same things that you are, and you get to start building that community again. Nobody's gonna look sideways at you for something that happened in program. You're in a community of people who know what that feels like.
But I guess that does mean it's a commitment, right? That when you sign up, yes, there's no cost to you, but you're saying that you'll stick through the services and you helping to provide the service.
We ask families to make that commitment when they come into program, and most of them do.
Yeah. And so what, are you talking 6, 9 months?
It usually takes about 4 to 6 months to work your way all the way through program. And that feels like a long time, but we're really talking about lifelong change. And some of the evidence that we have of program shows that not only are you talking about lifelong change for this family, but you parent the way you got parented, right? And so these children that are being parented in this consistent, straightforward way then go on to parent their own children that way.
You're saying RIP has been around long enough you've even seen it play out this way?
Yeah, this program started at Vanderbilt in 1969. So we have multiple generations of RIP families.
So it started at Vanderbilt, then became a state program and has been that way for a few decades now, right?
Since the late 70s.
Yeah. The late 70s. Well, what is the services are free to families, which means they're largely funded by, our tax dollars in the state. What is the case for the state funding a parenting program?
So I think what we talk about when we talk about early childhood is that we are really the very basis of mental health for human development, right? This is where kids are learning the most basic skills in that prevention tier and promotion tier that they will go on to use lifelong. These are grownups that can be productive in their society, that can engage with others, deal with conflict, recognize and respond to emotions appropriately, form long and lasting relationships with other people. It's long-term positive outcomes. Mm.
Well, your annual spring festival is at the office this weekend. Why this sort of like carnival each year? Do you almost have to give people a reason to come in and realize like this is not institutionalizing your child or something?
Yeah, I think it's really intimidating. Social media is full of suggestions for how to better parent your child. The noise is so loud and it can feel so overwhelming, and like everybody else is doing it fine and doesn't need help. So it's hard to pick up the phone and make that first call, even when you know you need it. What we love about our spring festival is that's a really low pressure way to come check out our program and see what we do and access other community resources and give your child some fun in the meantime. We've got face paints, the puppet truck's coming, the Bookem bus is coming. There will be lots of music and fun and food and opportunity to touch a truck. It's a great day.
And no one will judge the occasional tantrum.
No, we'll be there May 9th from 10 to 1, and we'd love to see you.
All right. Melissa Binkley, Director of the Office of Infant and Early Childhood Initiatives at the Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Blake.
When we come back, we're going to get to school-age kids and teens, from a little help at school to full-blown crisis services. We're looking at all the help that is hidden in plain sight for our little ones, caring for our kids. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
There are 3 gleaming golden portraits on the front of Nashville's historic courthouse and city hall. Who are they? Curious Nashville found out they're all historical lawmakers: King John, Moses, and Justinian. They were etched into those glass windows in 1937, and they're not in pristine shape anymore. See photos or ask us your question at WPLN.org/curious.
Curious Nashville.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. During Governor Bill Lee's time in office, he has greatly expanded the number of state-funded behavioral health positions in our schools. The number is now close to 400, and that is above and beyond the locally funded school counselors that work in schools across the state. And the recently passed state budget adds another $3 million to the budget for these liaisons, as they're called, to help kids who need a hand with their mental health. Melissa Bayless is the statewide coordinator. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Making the drive into Nashville to be here. And when things turn into a true crisis, kids often end up in the hands of Diana Jackson's team at Mental Health Co-op. It's a place that works with kids, no matter a family's ability to pay. Diana is Director of Nursing for Emergency Psychiatric Services, which we're going to talk about here. Diana, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Melissa, can we start with the school-based services? What's the difference between a school counselor, which I think we have an idea of what they might do, and a school-based mental health? I don't know if clinician is the right word. Like, what's the difference?
Yes, clinician would be a very appropriate word. A school counselor and social workers and most of the persons with those titles are school employees. And they are not in the medical field or mental health. They're not typically licensed. There's some dual licensures and things out there by colleges now. But the school-based behavioral health liaison program specifically hires master's level clinicians. They can offer therapy. They can provide a diagnosis, which, as we heard from Ms. Binkley earlier, a lot of kids are coming in without a diagnosis. And so that is where we can step in and have that liaison at the school to provide those services.
You're saying a school counselor is often not a licensed counselor, and so these
Correct.
are usually licensed counselors.
These are licensed therapists. And so a counselor, your school counselor, they do a lot of things. TCAP testing, they're putting out fires.
Right.
You know, that
far
day-to-day
beyond what
jobs.
you're thinking of as a
Right.
counseling duty.
And they can't usually provide therapy, whereas a licensed clinician or a master's level working under a licensed clinician can provide therapy.
Gotcha.
So,
and the program's in all 95 counties, and which sounds nice, but as I'm thinking through this, I'm guessing that these positions are far more valuable to schools, well, where you are in Pikeville, for instance, than in Nashville, where there are lots of services of these kinds.
I would think so, but again, I grew up in the rural area, but travel is a huge barrier for a lot of our rural communities. This helps to keep parents at work, kids in the school, helps keep them from taking an entire day off to go travel.
Right, because you might complain in Nashville because you're having to drive a little across town to take a kid to counseling. Mm-hmm. You're in Pikeville, you might be driving to Chattanooga.
Yes, about 70 plus miles, depending on where you live and the direction.
So instead, the counseling, is this happening inside a school building?
It is. We are a guest now in the House of the Schools. We try to focus on whatever needs the school has. So what they need is what we want to provide. Every district, when we get these funded positions, they get to decide, hey, what school has the most need and where do we want to put them? So one district we may have them in an elementary school, and in another county we may have them at middle and high school. Our goal is ultimately to end up having one liaison in every public school across the state.
Wow. So I assume we're far from that with 400, but...
Yes, but that Governor Lee and Commissioner Williams have worked really hard. When I came on board as a liaison just after COVID, I think it was like 35, 36 counties. And within a year, it went to 95 counties. And it just went, by agency, they only had 9 liaisons. Now we have almost 100 positions currently. So it has grown exponentially. And if you don't have a liaison, you want to get one.
I see. And that's Commissioner Marie Williams, who heads the Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. So outside of that department is Diana Jackson's work, and yet I know Mental Health Co-op works closely with the state. But can you tell us, like, when does a kid end up working with your team?
Sure. So anytime that a kid is experiencing a crisis, and that looks different for every child. If a kid is being bullied and they are just feeling really hopeless and helpless, they might reach out to their school counselor, or they might talk to a trusted adult and say, I'm really struggling. This happened today. Or it could get to the point where they are suicidal. Something is going on in their personal life. They're, having a terrible time. They have experienced a lot of trauma, and maybe this was the straw that broke the camel's back. And so they are calling us. We respond to any crisis calls in Davidson County. We go into schools. We go into hospitals. We go into community situations, wherever the need is. If they can't come to us, our counselors will go to them.
So it could be Melissa's team, her liaisons, that are making the call and saying, Diana, we're going to need you.
100%. 100%.
What, so our studios here at Nashville Public Radio are in Metro Center, and your facility is just around the corner here. What is this new facility that we really haven't had before, this kind of mid-level between a psychiatric hospitalization and just seeing a counselor?
Right. So it essentially has a walk-in center. So if anybody presents into our walk-in center, they can say, we're having a crisis. Mom brings kid. If the kid is, having any kind of crisis and they just show up, we have a crisis counselor that can see them very quickly. Within about 10 minutes, we've got them back into a safe room where they're chatting with a crisis counselor. These are master's level clinicians who are chatting with them about what happened, what brought them here, and what support they need right now to help them resolve that crisis. So once they determine whatever their need is, maybe they feel like they need some support and they need to separate themselves from whatever caused that crisis. We have beds on site. It's basically a step down from a hospital, and it is created to be a very soothing, calming environment. And we have resources on site for those children to see a therapist while they're here, to see a psychiatric provider for medication management while they're here. They're going to see nurses. They're going to get access to their medications so we can start it while they're with us if they need medications, or if they just need some psychiatric support in the form of therapy. We have lots of groups, different activities that are really geared towards those individual children. And we take kids age 4 to 17, and that's a huge range. So we try to make sure that we are gearing our groups towards whatever ages we have on site.
And are children, the sort of 4 to 17, separate from any sort of adult part of what Mental Health Co-op does?
Yes. So it is literally a kids unit.
It's its own unit.
Yes.
Which has not been open very long, correct?
No, we opened December 9th. We did a slow roll just to get things geared up for the first month, but now we are going strong. And we've been a great asset. We've seen, I'm not sure the exact number, but I would say we have remained steady with our utilization on our beds at about 40%-ish.
Mm-hmm. But meaning that you don't have to worry that there's not a bed these days. Right. There is space. Yeah. I'm Blake Farmer. This is Nashville. We're talking about caring for our kids, school-based settings and all the way to when things really become a crisis. Melissa Bayless, could you kind of walk me through scenarios where you might pick up the phone and say, we've got a crisis. Can you help? Do you have space at Mental Health Co-op? Because I'm sure parents are listening thinking, well, is this a crisis? Is that a crisis? Help us with some scenarios.
Yes. Well, we work with the multi-tiered system of support. And so we try to focus on that general 80% and do school climate activities, education, things like that. And then those tier 2, we do psychoeducation so we can be preventative and educate children, school staff, parents, and everything. But on those occasions when we do get to therapy and maybe therapy doesn't work, we need to step up, or it may just be a crisis in general. There could have been a death in the family. Just from my personal experience, coming back after COVID, we had a teacher pass away, and that was hard for our students. And this teacher, was like a mother figure to them. And so there were a few students that ended up needing crisis services. And so there's so many scenarios, but self-harm, any of those situations where they may harm themselves or someone else, we're definitely going to make that call and reach out for crisis services.
And how and would your all's catchment area the be kind of all of Middle Tennessee? I mean, where are people coming from at Mental Health Co-op's Youth Center?
Yeah, so Mental Health Co-op primarily responds to Davidson County. However, we do partner with outside counties. There are crisis services in every county, and a crisis counselor from another county can actually call us and say, hey, I have this kiddo. They're having a really hard time. They don't need to go to the hospital, but they could really use some support. And that's where we would say, let's talk about them. Let's get them here. Let's see what we can do. And we're going to work with that crisis team to figure out how we can get that kiddo to us. Whether that means we coordinate our own transportation, whether that means parents can bring them to us, or if they have TennCare, we can get them a TennCare ride to us. However we can get them to us in a safe way, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah. And is this, you mentioned TennCare. I imagine you all, can bill insurance and such, but like, for families who are thinking, yeah, that might be nice, but I don't want to see that bill, what can you do for them?
Well, we actually run off of state grants. So if an individual comes into our emergency psych center, they will never get a bill for any of the services.
Oh, not just that, we might be able to help out and cut your bill in half or something. There is not a bill.
Correct. There's no bill,
it's
no
state
charge.
Funded. Yeah,
Correct.
Melissa.
Yes, and I wanted to add about the Behavioral Health Liaison Program is also state funded, and so it's like $31 million, and so there is no bill to parents, and it doesn't matter insurance status, private, TennCare, no insurance. We're going to try different avenues such as safety net to try to get them insurance, but if not, the grant picks it up and fully covers, so it's available at no cost.
I see. So if you hear that your child has seen a counselor at school, don't worry. You won't be on the hook for that bill.
Correct. And that is through the liaison program. Yeah. And of course we get consent. We work very closely with our schools and our parents. So they can self-refer, the parents can refer, the school can refer, but the parent is going to know, hey, we are talking to your child and this is, what's going on.
Obviously the state has made a significant investment in the mental health of children over the last few years. What is the case for using tax dollars in a bigger way on this group of kids? Is it because there is so much more need, or have we learned something new?
I think it's a little bit of both. We're all still learning post-COVID about the challenges that we're all facing from that scenario. We were talking when I came in about, I was like, I don't think I'd ever listen to a podcast until COVID. So that's a positive benefit. But
I guess, depending on the show.
But, we've also learned a lot. We have data, and we are data driven. We send out caregiver surveys to every client, school. The school staff gets surveys. And when we get that feedback, last year, 80%.
Diana, I was looking at the most recent numbers, and they lag a bit. But you even look at kind of the peak issue here of self-harm and suicide. That rate has still been inching up a bit. And I here in Tennessee, the statewide numbers. How are you seeing that in your own experience at Mental Health Co-op?
Yeah, we see a lot of kiddos. There's a lot of pain that happens just day to day. Kids are experiencing a lot of trauma. Kids are experiencing a lot of meanness even between each other. And there's limited availability on services. And so any way that we can step in and intervene to get them connected with services. So say they come in for crisis and we're seeing that kiddo And we're seeing, sometimes we see them kind of repeatedly.
Oh, really?
And we're saying we got to figure out how we can keep them from coming back. And so, unfortunately, we are seeing a lot of kids. But that being said, we can also link them up with some resources so that when they leave our crisis center, they are connected to care.
You know, you mentioned trauma, and I think there's some people maybe who haven't had this direct experience in their household or something and think, are kids, what's so bad that's going on with kids these days? Or maybe they're quick to blame social media, screens, something. For folks who might have, not be convinced that kids really are having a tough time, what are kind of some examples you sort of point to say, listen, this is the kind of stuff we're seeing and it's serious?
Yeah. I mean, it could be bullying at school. I mean, that's different for every kiddo.
Yeah.
But that's a big one, that continued stimulus of just that negativity.
But bullying is old, right? Bullying has always happened. What's going on?
I think we just didn't address it. I think, part of it is we have the knowledge. We're seeing there are statistics. We have the data. And so now we need to do the work. We need to make sure that we're supporting the kids and giving them the care that they need so that they can become successful adults.
Yeah. Well, listen, how do you all address that in schools? Because obviously that's, at this age, that's where these things are happening.
Definitely. I was at a middle school, but conflict resolution is something we worked on every single day with almost every single student. And, when Diane talked about trauma, we call them ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, and it may not be always what we think. It may be having a parent with a terminal illness. It could be having a parent or caregiver in jail or in a rehab facility, or there's just so many things. So it's a big part of it is figuring out what is the issue. What are we dealing here? And you just kind of have to peel back the layers of the onion to get to it. And they could be the bully. They may be the one being bullied.
In other words, the bully also needs this help.
Yes.
Maybe more than anyone.
Definitely. And so we get those restorative practices. We bring them together, educate them on, hey, maybe we should try it this way. Let's try not to be punitive. Not that punishment doesn't have its place, but maybe that's not the first thing we need to reach out for. If we have a child who's stealing food on Fridays because they're going to go hungry over the weekend, let's figure out how we can correct that situation.
Well, let's close out with just a moment on the stigma here. Like Diana, I'm especially thinking of. I mean, your title includes emergency psychiatric. I mean, kind of intimidating words for any family who is dealing with a kiddo. I love your word there. And I wonder what you might say to someone who is not sure they want to come start that path.
Yeah.
Even if it's serious.
Yeah. It's not forever, right? If we can get their crisis resolved, get them linked with some support, it doesn't mean that they're going to be in services forever and always. It just means that right now they need some extra help. And that being said, we can link the parents up with support too, because that's a tough road to have to walk down. And any way we can link them up to help them to be successful as a child, but also to help that parent to figure out how to support that kid, that's the ultimate goal.
And what about at the school level where, like you said, you work with consent with parents? I'm guessing that can be a difficult road sometimes. My kid doesn't need counseling.
It can be, and it's just a matter of discussing, explaining the program, and again, explaining that, the goal is ultimately we want to work ourselves out of a job. We don't want kids on a caseload or in therapy forever. We want to make them better so they can go have fun with their friends. And again, it's a lot about education, a lot.
Melissa Bayless and Diana Jackson, really appreciate y'all making the time for us and helping us understand the services that are available to Tennessee kids.
Thank you.
When we come back, we're going to do something a little different and do something good for our own mental health. A unifying moment in music. Mo Sabri on his fusion of country and Qawwali music in his upcoming concert with the Nashville Symphony. Stay with us for some music and a good chat. This is Nashville. I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. We turn now to something that might be good for our own mental health, a musical project that aims to unite us where we are often divided along cultural and religious lines. There are not a lot of people trying to fuse American country music with the folk music of South Asia, Qawwali, but our guest is. Mo Sabri was raised in Johnson City, Tennessee, has spent the last decade here in Music City, trying to make music work. And much of that recent work is culminating at the end of this month with a concert backed by the Nashville Symphony at the Schermerhorn Symphony Center, a live performance of his new project called Tennessee Desi. Mo Sabri, welcome to This is Nashville.
Thank you so much for having me. That was such a beautiful introduction.
It can always be better, but I appreciate the compliments. All right, fusing Qawwali and country. Where did this come from?
Well, it honestly just came from truth. You know, I grew up in East Tennessee. I've been in Nashville for the past almost 10 years. This is a representation of both sides of my identity. You know, I'm from the birthplace of country music. And, you know, if someone says, where are you from? That's where I say I'm from. I'm from Johnson City, Tennessee, down the road from Bristol, you know, where country music is known to have started. The other half of me is I'm a first generation American son of immigrants who is of Muslim faith and South Asian heritage as well. And there's millions of people like me, you know, I'm not the only one, but growing up in East Tennessee, where, you know, some people might say it's the buckle of the Bible Belt, or at the very least, it's, you know, it's a place where there's not a lot of Muslims, and, you know, I'm visually different. People think that I believe different, which isn't, you know, we'll get into it, yeah. But there's not as much difference as people think. But this music was like, okay, I want to make this music that is a reflection of who I am on the inside. And, you know, I'm half country and I'm half Desi, you know, and...
well, explain that word Desi.
Yeah, so anything that's from like the South Asian subcontinent.
Your parents are from Pakistan, correct?
Yeah, they're from there. So anything from that region can be called Desi, just like anything from, let's say, where I'm from in East Tennessee is Appalachian.
Okay.
If you've ever, you know, eaten butter chicken, then you've had Desi food.
Got it.
And so this music is basically a fusion of the two, which it sounds like, oh, is that kind of random? But in reality, it's like, and I go through it in the concert specifically because it's like a songwriter type of concert where I'm like talking and explaining the songs. But, you know, there's this song that I think we're going to listen to a snippet of. It's called Allahu, which is a traditional Qawwali, Qawwali is basically like the country music of South Asia. That's how I describe it. And it's a lot of improvisation. It's really vocals, clapping, drums, like tabla drums, and this instrument called harmonium. But I kind of describe it as like a Pakistani Grateful Dead, like, you know, because these songs can be like, they come from this traditional poetry, like basically oral tradition in the same way that country music is. But, you know, so that you have some songs like, you know, Rocky Top, where the stanzas are the same, but you can do in between them and you can improvise. And so imagine people improvising Rocky Top for like 30 minutes.
Let's listen to a little bit of that now. This is Allahu. So I'm curious, somebody listening to this, let's say from Pakistan. What would they hear American country in that folk music of ours, or does this feel a little more like their own?
It's honestly a fusion because the instruments are country instruments. We've got acoustic guitar. This is like basically a bluegrass setup. We have acoustic guitar. We have banjo. Later on you'll hear some fiddle, but then also it had the tabla drums, which is like the very
Yeah.
Okay. But that's like a very important drum, instrument in South Asian music or Qawwali music, especially. In this particular version, I've also translated one of the stanzas into English. What's really cool about it is this famous song from South Asia. When I translated it into English, it is almost a word-for-word translation of the Book of Genesis, because these Qawwali songs they're a lot of they're essentially devotional music, right? Even though secular people love it as much as religious people, just because that's the power of music, right?
Oh. And Allahu, that's God, is what that word is, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Basically, it's kind of saying in that song, if you listen to it, when I translate it, I'm basically saying, the beginning of the Book of Genesis, what is like, before there was anything, there was God. And the chord progression of this song, this is the funnest part, the chord progression is literally Sweet Home Alabama. And I think that is like what seems so different in a fusion of two different things or disparate things is actually, no, it's the same thing. And I'm kind of the conduit to bring both of these things together.
Well, yeah, the more you're talking about it, the more I'm realizing this music really is just you. Let's listen to one of the songs that's also on this new project called Married in a Barn.
Let's go, let's get married in a barn. We'll hear the crickets at night, dance in the hay until dawn. Let's go, let's go, let's get married in a barn. Married in a barn. Let's go, let's get.
I also saw a video that goes with this song, and it appears to be you getting married in a barn. Is that like your wedding video?
Yeah. So,
okay.
And that's part of why this album kind of took a while, is that all the songs and everything, they're based off real experiences and my life. And I genuinely got married in a barn in Jonesboro, right across the street from, my parents' house. And it's basically a country wedding song.
Right.
And, but in that bridge that you played, actually, that had a bit of tabla drum.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah.
How did this symphony performance come to be? I mean, it just seems like there's probably a story there.
I'll say this. I'll start with this. It's not because I'm so cool. I really think that, honestly, this is such a big thing I never even dreamed that it would happen. It almost felt like it was too big of a dream. It was never on my radar. And I swear, I really think that this was something that God had a hand in. This is me as a person of faith talking like, I'm a completely independent artist. They were actually looking to do something, and that's why all the credit and so much credit goes to the Nashville Symphony for being so forward thinking, because I didn't really have to sell them on it. They kind of essentially brought me to the table. They were like, how can we make Nashville what it should be? Nashville has a large population of Muslims, so they inquired with the leaders in the Muslim community, and I was really fortunate that I was the name that they recommended.
I'm Blake Farmer. This is Nashville. We're with Mo Sabri, who is performing his new project, Tennessee Desi, with the Nashville Symphony. Before we have to let you go, I do want to kind of just back up to your start in music. I mean, you built up a big following on YouTube, like videos with 1 million views. Like, how did you start putting out music?
At the time, YouTube was first popping off, and I was like, well, this seems like an avenue to do it. And I started sharing my music online. I did gain a following. That's how I was able to basically, even while I was living in Nashville, and even though I wasn't part of like the industry here, I was able to sustain a career independently, was because of the internet and finding an audience who would come to shows, and I toured the country and even internationally. I actually kind of had to put that on pause in order to really get into Nashville, like the industry here, which is what I really wanted to do and why I moved here in the first place.
Well, you certainly, I mean, it's obvious, unless these are AI generated crowds, there's a lot of people that you've performed in front of, and obviously take in your music. I want to talk about this song called Jesus.
In the West, they call him Jesus. In the East, they call him Isa, Messiah, Christ, the same person that you speak of. Ask me why I wrote the song, and I will tell you because there's too many people silent. It's time for me to speak up. The son of a virgin. They say it is illogical, probably improbable, but God made it possible. Gabriel told Mary that her son would be phenomenal. His voice was
So we talk about the Old Testament, the New Testament today, with a devout Muslim. I know this is a deep cut. Okay, I know
Sure.
This is from long ago, but I am fascinated by it and wonder how it plays with Muslim audiences.
But just for context, that song was like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So I was still in school at the time.
You went to East Tennessee State, right? Which is kind of why your family was in Johnson City in the first place, right?
Yeah, we ended up at Johnson City because my mom, when she was still doing her like training. So yeah, but at the time, I think when I wrote that, I was maybe like a senior in high school and just getting into.
I'm just thinking of Johnson City culture, and it's like all these other kids are in like Christian youth group and stuff, and
yeah.
I don't know, you're trying to explain your own faith in a city that, I don't know, does Johnson City have a mosque?
Yeah, there is. There's a small community there.
Yeah.
My best friend is a white Christian. This is, shout out to Michael. So this is something that I think is surprising is that Muslims, I wrote a song about Jesus completely from the perspective of a Muslim, and everyone thought I converted to Christianity because it's like, it's not really contradictory. Like he is my Messiah and I'm awaiting his second coming, and people are probably surprised to hear that. I got a comment recently on one of my videos where someone was like, Christ is king, and I was like, I agree, bro. I commented back, I agree, because that, as a Muslim, it's like there's more about Jesus in the Quran than there is about Muhammad.
Is that right? Well, it shows my lack of knowledge of the Quran. Frankly.
It's okay, because that is part of what excites me about, being able to share about, my faith and who I am, is because in reality, we're brothers and we're neighbors, all of us, and music allows us to bridge those gaps, and that's why I make Fusion. That's why I wrote the song about Jesus. And what's cool about that one is that I actually got invited to the National Prayer Breakfast. So I was in undergrad, and I got to have breakfast with the President of the United States.
Wow. I do wonder, as you're in this country music era, listen, Christian religious themes run throughout so much of country music. And I just wonder if you see a similar opening to kind of explain the Muslim faith in a way that's not intimidating, frankly, to people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think music is a avenue to create bonds, and in reality, Islam and Christianity, we believe that they're like the most similar religions, and so in my concert, I kind of talk about my experience as a Muslim growing up as an American, because to me, being Muslim is American, just as American, and I can be country even as a Muslim, and that's part of the reason why I've kind of led with that, and it's just a beautiful opportunity because, like you said, there are themes in country. There's similar themes in Qawwali. But, I have songs about love. I have songs about, dedicated to my wife. I have songs, I got married in a barn. There's all aspects of life. And that's part of like faith. It's all encompassing. So, it's not going to be like a religious concert. But I'm a Muslim, so I talk about being Muslim.
Yeah. Just like a country artist might, a lot of country artists might talk about their own faith.
And it's just going to be a day of healing and unity, and a little bit of kumbaya, I think.
Different culture there, but I like the sentiment. Mo Sabri performs Tennessee Desi with the Nashville Symphony on May 31st at the Skirmahorn. Thank you so much for sharing a bit of your story here.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in this hour. This is Nashville as a production of Nashville Public Radio. If you missed Monday's show, we were with our outgoing Davidson County clerk, Brenda Wynn, charmed us all. I loved her reflections on how her position has meant marrying many couples in the city, maybe you. Listen in our podcast feed at thisisnashville.org or subscribe to WPLN's YouTube channel and watch. Today's episode was produced by yours truly. It was directed by Tasha A.F. Limley. Liv Lombardi is on the boards making us sound and look good. The masterminds behind our theme music are LaRange and Namir Blade. You can comment and tell us what you want to hear on the show by leaving us a message at 615-760-2000. You can also find us on Instagram at thisisnashville_WPLN. I'm Blake Farmer. Go in peace.